really want to respect everyone's time. We probably have another 20 or 30 folks who will continue to flow in, but let's get this session started. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the San Diego Grantmakers COVID-19 Community Update. My name is Megan Thomas. I am the Vice President of Collaboration and Special Initiatives here. My pronouns are she and her. And I'm really happy to welcome a phenomenal panel of folks into conversation today. And we'll get into that just a little bit more. You all know the tech, so there it is. Today's topic is on mutual aid, or really what I think of as neighbors stepping up to help neighbors in the way that they have basically for all time. This is really about how our community supports itself. But we'll hear a lot more about that. First, I want to hand the virtual microphone over to our President and CEO, Debbie McKeon. Just one note before we do that is that we are recording this session, so you will have it available to you to revisit and share later, and we hope you will do that. Debbie, please open us up. I'm going to stop sharing. There we go.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Megan, and good afternoon and welcome everyone. Today, I'm really pleased to be with you here for our San Diego Grantmakers COVID-19 Community Information Series. You know, we learned when this pandemic started in March that people were really keen to come together to get information and get connected. So we've sensed that this has been a really important series. We also recognize that a lot of important and productive solutions have come out of conversations, whether they happened here or got catalyzed here, but that we know it's important to set opportunities for people to talk so they can collaborate. And it's been really our pleasure to offer this place where people can have a hub for these communications. And we are deeply committed to continue the conversation, the consultation, and the collaboration as we go forward. But yet we also recognize that it seems like we've come to a point where people now would like us to give them some other spaces and ways in which they can engage and collaborate and talk and understand going forward. So today is going to be our final session of this series, but it could not be more appropriate that we would highlight our guests and our friends and our colleague members who are with us here today, because it's their actions who really exemplify the true meaning of philanthropy, the love of mankind, and humankind, I should say. And that I have to say I've been very personally inspired by what each person is doing and sharing, and I learn a great deal, and I am looking forward to all of us being together in this conversation. I'll turn it back to you, Megan.
Thank you so much for that introduction, Debbie. I want to invite everybody to really kind of arrive in this conversation, be present, whatever you are coming from, whatever you're carrying with you, and wherever you're going to. We have an opportunity to connect here, and so in whatever way you're comfortable, let's just take a moment to ground in. I like to breathe, find whatever tension my body is holding, because it's always there, and let that go. I'm just going to give us 3 breaths together, which you can take at your ability and pleasure. So breathing in and out, breathing in and out. Let that last little bit go, breathing in and out. All right, thank you. Thank you so much. And although I know we have a few folks on this session who aren't right here in San Diego and Imperial counties with us, so you'll have your own knowledge to bring to this. It's important for us to really recognize that wherever we are, if we're in San Diego, we are on the traditional and unceded land of the Kumeyaay people. And when we think about a community approach to care and a concept of self as other, I'm really inspired and reminded of the traditions and the culture of those people who are with us here today. This is not a past people, despite the genocide that they suffered. These are still our friends and neighbors. And so with that tradition, I'm really happy to introduce, for those who are visual, oops, let's see if I can just share my screen real quick so you can see who our speakers are today. Brilliant, beautiful, wonderful people. We have Kelsey Daniels from the March for Black Women San Diego, Candy Custodio-10 from All We Got San Diego, and Armand King from Paving Great Futures. So they each bring a piece of this story, and without further ado, I'm happy to hand it over to Kelsey to start us off and bring us in. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. Excuse me. So like Megan said, my name is Kelsey Daniels. I am a co-organizer with March for Black Women San Diego. And our piece in this mutual aid work is that we established a mutual aid fund called Black Women Deserve. And this was a continuation of work that we've been doing for the past 3 years with funds that we've raised for our march, which is redistributing into Black women in need. So we had been doing this unofficially, and when COVID-19 hit, we knew that we wanted to do this and extend the work to our larger network, right? So in the past, it had been Black women that we've known or we've met, and we figured out ways to get this, and we knew that we wanted to solicit more funds. Since launching early May, I want to say May 7th, we distributed close to $35,000. And we are continuing to get funds into our organization. This has all been through peer-to-peer fundraising, so Venmo, PayPal, and Cash App, and the majority of them being small donations. We've recently gotten a couple of small companies who have decided to do fundraising in our honor, but we're really proud of the fact that a lot of this work has been coming from everyday people who knew that it was important to prioritize this work. One of the things that we center is that, like, Black women, especially Black women who have been pushed to the margins because of other identities that they hold, Black trans women, Black women who may be relegated to underground labor because of all of the isms and phobias, sex workers, different things like that. Like, they are disproportionately not eligible for services, right? And so one of the things that we are really passionate about is not operating in the legacy of how some nonprofits have done, like asking for this big proof or like receipts, because we believe in self-determination. We also have been working to do linkages to other resources. So Candy is going to get on here and talk about We Got San Diego, but because of the beautiful things that they're doing around food justice, like, we've been able to educate folks about there is this opportunity. We've been able to partner with different organizations that do things around birth work or new families. A lot of our recipients have young children, so we've been able to educate them about the pandemic EBT and those type of things. And so we've really been working not only to provide financial resources, but to provide linkages to care and to build relationships. One of the things that we'll be launching soon is a Facebook group based off of another program, March for Black Women, called Black Women Save My Life, because mutual aid is not just about funds, it's about skill sharing. And so we've had Black women who are like, hey, I have these diapers, and I've been able to link them with other folks who needed them, right? And so we want to facilitate that growth too, because it's not just about giving money, it's about building a community in the future that we want to see happen, right? That's a little bit different from what's happening now. So that's a little bit of what we've been doing. The support that we're asking for, of course, funds, resources that look like that would be helpful to the people that we serve. And also we're looking to strengthen our infrastructure so that way we can do this process a little bit more seamlessly in redistributing funds, because when we use things like PayPal and Venmo, sometimes there's caps. And so there's a limit on how much money we can send a week. And so right now we're really working on trying to figure out other ways to be able to redistribute, because as much as the word is getting out, more people are asking for our services, which is a great problem to have. And we want to make sure that we can facilitate those funds getting to the people who need them. So yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Kelsey, are you seeing any shift or change in the needs, the requests that are coming in terms of what, or timing, or the intensity?
A huge need, or a huge foundational request, is for housing assistance, because even though the evictions aren't being pushed out, like, there are people who are finding, because they're not getting work, that they need the support. We've also dealt with and this is a larger systemic issue, folks who receive government checks, like Social Security, like, if they get money into their bank account, that could have a detrimental effect, right? So figuring out ways to support people in a way that won't mess up their benefits is something that we're really working on, and being able to maybe get them the things that they need, rather than giving them cash, because we don't.
Yeah, and I think, just for anybody who might not quite understand what you mean, I think what you're talking about is government aid is predicated on a system that says you can't save, if you have any assets, then we reduce your benefits, which is sort of counterproductive to the idea of building stability.
Especially when people are on a fixed income. So, we have elderly folks who are on Social Security, and they can't have any, like, fluctuation in their bank account, or they're going to take money, which is so counterproductive to the fact that people clearly can't live off of these things, or, deal with crisis that might arise that doesn't get covered by their income. So
yeah, great. And who is involved on the back end of all this? Who is March for Black Women, or who is Black Women Deserve?
So March for Black Women is a collective of a lot of amazing folks. So Naisha Green Washington, Kristina Griffin Jones. We also have some newer members, Imani Marshall, Keegan Farrell, who've really been a huge part of this, not just planning the march, but as we really ran with the idea of Black Women Deserve over the course of the past month and a half. Have really stepped up, and we're actually consistently getting requests on doing this. So we're also trying to come with the onboarding process of, like, how do we flow through the Black Women Deserve process and make sure that we're not just being automated robots, right? And we're acting with the care that maybe people aren't used to receiving when they're on the recipient ends of getting funds, right? Because that's one of our big things. We're operating in the care that maybe some of these other systems and organizations aren't allowed to. So we're checking in. The conversation might be an hour and a half because we're building relationships and building rapport. So we have a pretty strong and rapidly growing team as well.
Fantastic. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
So Candy, if you are ready to step to the mic and share a little bit about what you've been doing and seeing, we'd love to hear from you at this point.
Hello, everybody. Let me put up my screen so that way I'm going to share screen right now. So we can get this. Too much on my screen. I like everything up here. Okay. Oh, wait. Why is it showing that? So odd. Okay, here we go. And then it's going to... Okay, do you see the screen? Okay, good.
It's good to go.
Okay, my name is Candy. As we said before, my pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm part of We All We Got. Kristina Griffin wasn't able to make it today, so she sends her hello, and she's grateful for the space that's being provided today. So how did we get here? Oh, why did it do that? Okay, I have no idea why.
We're seeing, we're seeing your presenter screen.
Oh, you are? Okay,
yeah,
so you're seeing it? Okay.
Probably split.
I don't know why it's split like that. So how did we get started? Basically, we saw a need when the pandemic first started. Kristina and I are longtime friends for about a good decade. So a lot of our work is definitely on our relationships with each other, and that's what we believe in. because we believe in deepening our relationships in our community and with each other as friends and as we do organizing work. So I've met Kristina as a community organizer here in San Diego at a lot of direct actions. So
Candy, I'm so sorry to interrupt you, but we're still seeing, we can't see the slides.
That's so odd. I don't know why it's doing that.
And I just see you have a beautiful picture of Kristina. There we go.
Oh, thank you. Do you see it now?
Oh, no, no, it went back. Whatever you did a moment ago, that worked. Yeah, that's good. Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's so odd. I don't know.
I think when you press presenter view, like you have to click the got it.
Okay, but do you see it in full screen?
No, like, okay, so I think when you click present, right?
Yeah. Oh, it's doing presenter view, that's why.
Oh yeah, standard.
There we go. Do you see it now?
All right.
Oh my goodness.
Way to go, team.
Because we did it on Canva. So, and I added Kristina here. Originally, she put just me, and I could not have done this work without Kristina, you know, and Kelsey as well. So I first witnessed a lot of mutual aids happening in Seattle and Chicago. But even prior to that, with the fires last year in Northern California, a lot of mutual aids had begun then. And even then, when the fires were possibly coming down here, I was prepared as one who really believes in disability justice work. How do we serve our communities? So when the pandemic started, it made sense that we also start a mutual aid. And reached out to Kristina and I said, we should start a mutual aid. And right away, we began one. But we have a particular belief in what mutual aid is, and Kelsey spoke a lot about it, where we believe that mutual aid is about solidarity and not charity. It's about justice, where it's about meeting people where they are at. It's about also liberation and not recuperation of the state. A lot of these things I've learned along the way by other organizers, like a good friend of mine named Ashley Henderson from the Highlander Center, who is a historic space in Black liberation movement work down south. So I followed their lead and what does it mean to provide for our communities. So a lot of this work is grounded in that it's about challenging the state and the status quo. And it's also about autonomy and power, to empower our communities and their right for self-determination. And also about political action through meeting each other, where we're not apolitical, that we have a belief in also organizing our folks. So for us, I look to the models of the way people in Puerto Rico have shown up for each other. We look to the models of how the Black Panthers have done that work. A lot of my own idea in political process of how mutual aids is about providing that space of action and serving our communities and meeting where the people are at. So that's pretty much how we started. We came together and we started following some of the models that Chicago, Kelsey Hayes, who's a known journalist and organizer in Chicago, and we started following their templates and also uplifting their work and citing their models and how they started their mutual aid and fundraising as well. So how did we get down? Like, we just started with forums, outreaching in our communities, and because of the long relationship Kristina and I have in the community with relationships with people, it also comes with trust and relationships. And because we have those trusts and relationships in community, including with Kelsey, we've been able to bridge these communities together, and automatically, instantly, people trusted us. And we take those trusts really seriously. They started volunteering, and right away we had 600 people that have applied on applications because people were ready. We're ready to start serving the communities. And then from there, people started donating right away. And we started just fundraising, people donating for the mutual aid. And then as soon as you know it, people were asking for requests. And so we started utilizing what systems, formats that we could utilize. So we used Trello boards as a way to kind of create a system, because we didn't have a database. We didn't have any of those kind of materials and software programming to receive these applications other than Google Forms, Google Docs. And so that's kind of how we got started, and we started fundraising and working in our communities with all the volunteers, and then calling what we call our harmonizer group to create these pathways. And then we call a lot of our volunteers navigators, how we navigate through the process and how we do our work. But we were also very clear on how we set these principles in our community, which I've laid out for you, that it's about solidarity and not charity, and it's about justice and building power and autonomy. So where we are now, we've served over 996 communities. These numbers are actually not as updated. We've served close to, I would say, 700, 800 members in our community, neighbors. We've also had all of these requests been met. We prioritize Black, Indigenous, people of color communities, the people with disabilities, those who are immunocompromised and immunosuppressed. Those are the folks we prioritize in how we do this. We also do this in a trust-based system where we trust the people who are filling out these applications, that it's not going to be the typical way how forms are, that it's not going to be this typical way of deciding how one gets their needs met, that we go by that trust, we move at the speed and the pace of the trust of the community. And we were very clear on that we didn't want to do the typical format of how do we know what is your age, or how do we know that you can't meet rent, that you can't pay this. This is not the typical fashion. When people are in need, people are in crisis. I know this as someone myself who has gone through government assistance and how much obstacles there is to apply for funds, to apply to prove that I have to pay rent, to prove that I'm in dire need. We wanted to make sure that our folks didn't have to have another obstacle for them to feel the anxiety that they're met with crisis. They can't meet rent, they can't pay their groceries, and now they have to upload documents to prove that they have to pay utility bills. That is not the pathway that we believe in as people that trust our community and the people that we're serving. So because of this work and this belief, people automatically applied right away and quickly trusted us, and we were able to meet this amount of folks in our community. So this is how I've laid out some of the ways we do it. We have our harmonizers, those of us who are pretty much like core folks in our group who set the pathway and the work that we do. We have our navigators, which is all our volunteers. We have matchmakers to match people from different locations of San Diego to people who live in those communities to serve them, who are the volunteers. And then we have our dispatchers on the calls who are making these conversations and finding out what people's needs are as they fill out those requests. And then we send folks out to do the shopping and then do the delivering. We're also now at a place, we're now at a place where we're doing food distribution as well. We've teamed up with a lot of partners in our communities, folks who have came to us like, hey, we have these kind of supplies and foods available. And then we are partnering with that. We're partnering, like hosting these food distribution with the Brown Building as well. So we're partnering with folks. People drop off things for us and providing supplies to be able to give to our communities. And sometimes they're real random. Sometimes people will say, hey, I've got this, and then we'll find a place where we need it. Or sometimes people will just outreach to us because you build that relationship. Right now, we're also setting up a process of case management at this time. We're working with clinicians and social workers. We have good folks like my friend Ree, who is a social worker, helping us set up a database process of how, upon dispatch, how we can check in with people's wellness. We started finding that when folks call in during the dispatch process, how folks are expressing their needs and expressing their mental health at this time. So we felt there was a great need as someone who's done phone banking as well as call crisis lines in my previous work. I knew that it'll take a particular skill set and to train our folks in our communities to be able to check in with our peoples and to see how they're doing, and then provide resources. We're doing multiple things. We're trying to also do several conversations in our communities in this present time. So these are some of the things that we're up to in our community, aside from just the food distribution. We're really about building our power and building our community and meeting where people are at. This is some of the drive-up food distribution that we do every Thursday at the Brown Building, and who we prioritize, and some of the work that we've been doing now for the last week. And then how we can support is just show up for each other. Let's collaborate. Let's build. We fundraise. We try to meet the fundraising match every month, meeting people, asking for our needs in our community. So these are the ways we can collaborate with each other, whether you know of folks who have offerings of supplies and materials that we can put for the distribution, or whether it's, money, like literally every month we're trying to fundraise to meet people's needs. So to donate, you can visit us on our website as well, or right here, directly here, or at wegotsd.com.
Perfect. And we will share out, again, all the links for contributions to each of these organizations. Candy, I was wondering, can you say a little bit about how you all work together? We're talking about Kelsey's work and your work and everybody together. It could come off like there's two things going on, but my impression is they're very interconnected.
Well, we're interconnected, and Kelsey, you can chime in anytime, please. One, a lot of us are in multiple different organizations, even my own organization, Asian Solidarity Collective. We definitely support We All We Got. We amplify it through our networks. A lot of my own time is shared into contributing my time with We All We Got, but we're all volunteers to this work currently. Every single person in our group has been doing this for 4 months now at volunteer basis, because it's what we believe in. Whether we're paid or not, this is what we do because we're here for our folks, we believe in it. But it is helpful if we have people at a full-time basis. I've seen the difference at working at Asian Solidarity Collective. Our well-being, for those of us who serve our communities, we're in need. But our connection, I'll let Kelsey chime in if you'd like, and you can share more on how we are connected.
Yeah, so I am blessed to be in deep relationship with Kristina Griffin Jones through the work that I do with Marshall Black Women in San Diego. And so when COVID hit, her and Candy were having conversations about doing this mutual aid, and she sent a message to myself and another co-organizer like, y'all down? And so that was really kind of the foundation of how it built. But I think it was just also like this mutual respect of like the organizing work that we had been doing separately, and knowing that this was something that we wanted to do together to reach the different pockets of our community. And much like Candy said, over with our mutual aid, it is all volunteer. I'm in a interesting space of being unemployed now, and so having a little bit more time to do this, but it absolutely is just like a passion project from the heart. And like Candy said, I think that like having access to more funding where we could pay people to do this work will also allow us to be able to do it more intentionally and fully. Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much for that. And then our third speaker is Mr. Armand King, who's going to share a little bit about the work that he's been doing with Paving Great Futures and in the community across a whole lot of collaborative efforts down there. Thanks, Armand.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. And just want to salute both Candy and Kelsey. This is part of what I'm about to say. This crisis that we're addressing right now, our communities have been in crisis, and I'm looking at these two sisters' faces right here, and they've been in the mix. They've been helping. Their hands, their feet have been on the ground, been doing this work. And I love how I see the people that have been there just jump right in. Not even necessarily jump in, they were already in. It just got more, the work we were already doing just intensified with COVID-19. COVID-19 didn't bring a crisis to our community. Our community was in crisis before COVID-19. It just got intensified and also just magnified to everybody stuff that was already lacking. We've been in a food desert. We've been not getting proper health care. We've been in these situations. And it's sad at the same time as I'm happy that we're all coming together and helping people, but you see how grave the need is in the community. So as far as us, every Tuesday since at least it's been since COVID hit, man. So it's probably about 4 months now. We've been doing in a collaboration with I'm My Brother's Keeper and a few other individuals and organizations, but spearheaded by I'm My Brother's Keeper, Paving Great Futures, teamed up with them as we've been teammates in our community and working towards the betterment of our people. And we do a food drive every Tuesday. The first one started at Pillars, right there at the People's Lot. And then we moved, because of the great need we had, we ended up having to move locations where now we're operating out of at the Jacob Center, not in collaboration with, but we're operating at the Jacob Center. And literally every Tuesday we have at the least amount of cars counted, which a car represents a family, we'll say, that's 400 and as high as 800 vehicles and more have come through on a weekly basis. And I look at the line and I look at the amount of people that are coming through and they have no idea of what they're coming for. And sometimes they're waiting in lines in their cars all the way past the Jacob Center, wrapping around the corner to the freeway, some to Market, down Market Street. And these are our brothers and sisters that are waiting in line for a mystery bag. You don't know what you're getting. But to me, that means if you're willing to come out of your time and sit in this car and wait, then you really, really need whatever it is that's getting offered. So it's great. We have probably about 30 different volunteers on a weekly basis that are there. No one's paid. Everyone's there at their own time and their heart. They commit whatever amount of hours they can, and we make it happen. You know, we really wrap our arms around the community and are feeding families. You know, some of these cars, I said a car, but that car may have 3 families in it because they didn't have, we also have walk-up distribution. I don't have the number off the top of my head of how many people in line, which are at least 100 individuals. We do have a delivery system where we're delivering to seniors and disabled individuals in the community. We've gone as far as members from our community don't even necessarily live. When I say community, doesn't mean just Southeast and 4th District. Our community stretches all the way to El Cajon City. And we have members in Fashion Valley that need food, and we deliver to them as well. So we've been doing that consistently with the collaboration with bigger organizations, the San Diego Food Bank, Feeding America, who's dropping off food to us every week. It's been great. As an organization, as Paving Great Futures, we were already running programs. We had 2 programs that were running when COVID hit. We have a calendar in different times when we have these programs. But at this particular time, we had our Women's Entrepreneur Program, the Jewels Program. So it was like the relationship we have with our participants and our family members, we couldn't just cut them off. So we had to think outside the box, and I like it. I love stretching your muscles. So it was like, how do we still deliver to our people? So that particular program went to a virtual thing where they still continue that going on. And our newer program through the Department of Labor is a program we call Hire, and we're dealing with working with young individuals that have been previously incarcerated, on probation, parole, or at some point been involved in the criminal justice system. So that program, the people we're dealing with, they were already like on the edge of going back to jail, of doing something that, they were already they were in super crisis before the crisis. So we could not go virtual with them. Like that individual needs to see my face and feel my heart. I can't do this over the phone. They need to know how real we are and how the help we're giving to them. A lot of these individuals have never had a job before, have not had families. I have one guy that's right now, he's been in jail since he was 10 years old, committed a crime at 10 years old against somebody who was abusing him, and did the rest of his his childhood was spent in jail. We have people like that. How do I go on a Zoom conference with this guy? It's not feasible. So we cut down the amount of people we had in a particular class, by half to what the government said we could do, which is meeting of 10 and under. So we did that, keeping masks and trying to be as sanitary as possible, health conscious as possible, but just stopping with them was not a solution at all. So we actually have intensified in that area, and we're continuing that program. Everything else is kind of on hold for now. We had to put off a lot of our other events that we're having, but the food drive, pretty much one main one a week, and we're actually expanding into doing 3 a week in different areas. We are delivering now to Lemon Grove and have a setup there, and we're expanding into South Bay. So hopefully this goes through. We're working with the food bank now to become a super pantry. I think right now we are the second largest food distribution in San Diego. You won't see it on the news. They happen to cover everything else at Qualcomm and other places, but us over here that are boots to the ground, really giving it to our community. That's pretty much where we're at. The food distribution, and then as an organization, and the hire program right now.
Thank you so much, Armand. And I think that point you made at the end, that where does the news media go, just follows the path of who's already got the influence and the networks and access to those sort of centers of power, right? It's going to be where the attention is going. And hopefully we begin a little bit of remedying that here today. But I wanted to come back for a moment to where you opened, which was, the things that are being experienced in what we're calling this new crisis are not new to some of the folks and communities that you're dealing with. And Candy and Kelsey were both talking about taking a different approach, taking a justice-oriented approach, taking a mutual respect and community approach to sharing the wealth that we have, whatever that might be, and not asking people to justify their need. Which I think if I come from a place of philanthropy and its history of sort of holding wealth and resources and doling them out as it sees fit, without necessarily consulting the community, I do think there is an opportunity here to learn some of these lessons and kind of expose what success can be had when we break down those processes, those systems, those presumptions of let's presume people are honest rather than presume people are trying to game the system, right? Let's just do that. I wonder if across all of you, Armand, Kelsey, Candy, what might be some of the things that are happening now that you could offer up that we could think about doing going forward that would bring us closer to a just society? If this is the great awakening for, modern day philanthropy and others, what lessons should we be taking?
I think this is a good, I'm sorry, go ahead, Kelsey.
Yeah, I think, we're talking about gaming the system, and one thing that has been brought to my attention when we're having these conversations is why are we criminalizing people for surviving, right? Like, if people feel like that's something that they have to do to get their needs met, punishing them for that isn't going to encourage them to move differently, right? And it's not our place to be in this position of moral superiority about how people are moving, right? And I think that's kind of the ethos of what we're holding. Like Candy said, solidarity, not charity. We're not here to do this out of the kindness of our hearts. We're here to redistribute the wealth that was not necessarily earned, right, by these people who have access to it, right? If we're talking about we understand systemic inequity, that means that we understand the barriers for people to have access to this capital and these resources, and rather than punishing them for needing it, and also understanding the negotiation people have to go through to even ask for help. On every call that I've made talking to a Black woman, there's this well, I don't even really feel like I should be asking. I'm not in the worst situation. And that is what a lot of folks feel when they are asking for help. And then to spit in their face, basically, well, do you really need it? That is moving from a place of benevolence, right? And we're basically saying you deserve to have your needs met and then some, right? You deserve to be able to pay your rent and be able to buy a burrito if you want to, and that's not asking for too much. And so I think that is the mindset that needs to shift when people do have access to these funds. We shouldn't be nickel and diming folks having access to the money that's there. And that's what we're realizing, right? There's so much money that's always been there that now we're getting because we're in a worldwide crisis, and we could have been doing these things all along. And so I think that's something to think about too once we leave COVID-19, right? Like, how are we going to still make sure that we're showing up in fullness for our communities that are far too often like just used for like photo ops and then like go off, you know, do your thing. So that's what I'd say.
Thank you so much. I love that, showing up in fullness for our communities. That's beautiful. Armand, what were you going to say?
She said it. Yeah, she said it, but I love it. And this is a great time of awakening, and things are being exposed right now in a tremendous way, from COVID-19 being the perfect storm to the protests we have now. It's time for exposure. It's time for change. There is no turning back around. This is not about the moment. It's about the movement. And for those that are newly awoken and getting and jumping in and helping in time of crisis, hearts have been touched, you know, jump in the boat, grab an oar, because it's not over. You know what I mean? We got to keep rowing, you know, so we could use your help, you know, and everybody's part is equally as important, including the philanthropists who may never put those boots on and cleats on and get in the field with me. But we need you. We need you. Candy needs you. Kelsey needs you. We can only go but so far with the work we're doing without the proper support, you know, and there's so much more that we can do. And we work together, you know, even if it's not directly, we know it's a team out here, and it's the same group of people that's been doing this work for a while, and we're not going nowhere. We're doing this because we're committed. You know, commitment is it. I live this. I breathe this. I wouldn't feel right if I was out. You know, there's no dollar sign that you could give me to take me away from this work of my team. And I'm sure the same with them. So, yeah, that's all. So this is a great time of change. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that. I think, you know, you make me think there's an opportunity for folks who are new in this realization that they need to participate, to have them participate in a good way, in the right way from the beginning, rather than getting entrenched in some of the practices that limit communities' access and people's access to control over these funds that are part of this great inequity in how wealth is distributed that historically has arisen from all the way back to slavery and genocide,
right,
redlining, what have you.
Right.
So if we can introduce a first experience as the right way, we might make some steps. So really a question from the crowd, and now that we've had all these great examples of mutual aid, could one of you just give a basic definition of what mutual aid is, as distinct from you know, sort of what we think about as funding a nonprofit to do community work?
Can you repeat that, please?
Yeah, just basically define mutual aid.
I don't know. You have to explain that a little further.
I bet Candy could do it.
I mean, we have a description of what mutual aid is from We All We Got, which is it's about solidarity, not charity. It's about justice and building power. It's about autonomy and agency amongst our people. It's more than just survival, but about community care. It's about prioritizing the most vulnerable in our communities. Mutual aid is about redistributing to meet the needs of our communities. It's about finding out solutions together, because all we got is us. It's about building the world we want through collective power and action. Mutual aid is the moment where we meet people where they are at, as it is an essential tool of base building and relationship building by genuinely serving the people. We're not just trying to survive under a global pandemic. We are out here building power and movement building for our freedom.
That'll do. That's beautiful. And you reminded me that this is a moment when we're in the middle of a lot of things that have to do with power in our communities. We're in census, we're in election times, we're in you know, economic shifts, right? And so the more relationships that can be built so that those conversations happen, and so that there is a power to show up in the state capitol and get Dr. Weber's bill on affirmative action passed, so we can all have a conversation about that. Like, this is it's more than a moment about one issue. It's about our entire society. Does anybody have a question? I haven't seen too many pop in the box, but if anybody's on and wants to unmute themselves, or just say hello, because I could keep going all day. All right. Well, if you do, just pop it into the chat box or just speak up. But maybe sort of starting to wind down then, can we talk about the future, about what comes next? You know, Kelsey, you said that y'all had distributed about $35,000 based on small donations, you know, individual folks stepping up. Is the idea to keep going? Is there an end date? If there was an influx of funds, what would that look like? Is that not where you want to go? Because that would change the dynamic of what's happening. For each of you, maybe just take a couple of minutes and describe what happens next. What should we be thinking about? Or what should we know? And if you have a call to action, put it out there.
Okay, so I'll take this one really quick. So like I said at the beginning, these situations and things that we're facing as a community have always been there. COVID-19, with the recent protests and racial issues that have been brought to the public's attention that we've been crying about for years. There's people on the ground that have been working on these issues, working on diversity training for the police, working on feeding the community, working on ending this food desert that we have. There's people that are already working on this, been working on this, that are not funded at all or underfunded. So I don't think we need to even look into creating something new. Look at the people who have been fighting the fight. Go to them and figure out where your heart is, your passion as a philanthropist or whatever, where your heart is in this movement, because there's many different angles, and support the people that are doing the work and have been doing the work out of their heart. There's no need to try and brainstorm, what do we need to do? Believe me, the people with the solutions have been working on them without the support already. We support each other, but it's only so far we can go. So yeah, so I would say that, you know, get with the people that are already boots to the ground, already working on these solutions, already in fighting like you mentioned, Dr. Shirley Weber. She's been fighting, you know, she's been pushing these issues. She's been bringing this up on a legislative end. They've been, I believe, I'm not sure, Kelsey, if we went to the Time Done in Sacramento, I think you were with me there or somewhere. But there's people that have been fighting these issues. Pillars been fighting these issues. So no need to recreate. Trust me, there's foot soldiers already there doing the work, and have solutions. Not just people aren't just out here screaming and yelling and mad and hungry. No, there's other community members and people with solutions that need to be brought to the light and supported.
Thank you. So we have a couple questions actually. I'm gonna just toss them out there, and if anybody wants to comment on them. One was if there are any funders in the philanthropic world who have been a part of the work you're doing. Maybe it's now, and maybe it's just over the experience of a lifetime of doing this work, that you see them actually walking the walk with you. And the other is, as you're thinking about how to distribute resources, knowing you want to come from a justice and a liberation and an uplifting sort of standpoint, how do you navigate that decision? Because the truth, you know, the one truth is there's always more need than we have resources, at least resources available. So if you want to comment on those, please do. Or if you want to just give sort of some final thoughts, please do that as well.
So I was waiting to see if Candy or Armand had anything to say. I think kind of going back to your first question around like, what are we looking for? Do we plan on having an end date? No. I think post COVID, we would love to figure out the best way to be able to support our people more in person as well. I know one thing that I would love to do is to be able to have like rental stipends, like that we could actually give to people. We have, as you know, housing crisis is real in San Diego, and we have folks who are like, I am on the streets, right? Like I'm living in my car, right? How do we navigate ushering them from that into housing? Like how do we make sure that they have the support and we're able to advocate with them as they are using these county resources, right? Because I'm a former case manager. I know what it's like. I know the care that exists sometimes, and I know the callousness that exists sometimes, right? And we know the difference with having someone who knows the language, being able to be like, actually, no. And so, you know, those are things I would love to be able to support with. I think we're in this really unique space of using our organizing background to like potentially build an infrastructure to be able to do some of these things. And so, yeah, that's the big thing. We're growing. We're trying to meet people where they're at. We're trying to find the resources that we feel comfortable referring people to, right? That are going to be the least traumatic, to be able to continue to do this work, while also staying true to, you know, the ideals that this is about solidarity. This is about self-determination, and, you know, rooting ourselves in that first and foremost.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a really important point I think you just made, is coming from a place where you're trying to respect and support people and not traumatize them with the experience of being supported by community. You don't want to then refer them to an institution or a resource that's going to do that. So that kind of gets at that systemic level of how do we change the landscape, or identify sort of the best resources we have so that we can all be improved in our approach. Learn from y'all. Follow Black women. Candy?
Oh yeah, well, post-COVID, I mean, I just want to echo and lift up what else Kelsey said. I mean, there's just thinking about how this is going to continue on, and also what Armand said, like how our folks been in crisis prior to COVID-19 and post-COVID-19, I fear it will be the same, you know what I mean? And worse and dire, you know, and how we need to have these sustainable things that because of structural racism, because of all the systems that are in place, constantly not having this distribution or funding for the communities that need it. So even when I think about We All We Got getting funding, I think about the other folks we need to redistribute to as We All We Got. You know what I mean? Because other grassroots orgs are also in need of funding who may not be lifted up. So one thing I believe in is lifting up other grassroots organizations who also need the support. I think about that. I think about Michelle's question here around what are the gaps? You know, I think one of the things that we're seeing are definitely mental health, you know, and that's why that's something we're adding on, you know, and Kelsey lifted up being a case manager. We're having to see that we have to connect people to these resources, but when those resources are tapped out, what do we do then? So there's those gaps there with those lack of resources, because the resources where they typically get are already tapped out, and then they have nowhere to go. And then of course the mental health that folks are experiencing in this time. So there's gaps with that. And also in this time where we're dreaming and trying to dream abolition into the world, into fruition. So how do we help folks that are alternative models, and how do we redefine safety and security for folks? Food security, what does that look like? What does that mean? Something tangible where it's not just dreaming it, but actually putting in that to action, where we're meeting folks with their mental health and providing these resources. And folks like us in our ground, in our community, that have figured out doing this without those tapped out, with those resources already tapped out, or not coming into those who are most vulnerable. We've been figuring it out a long time ago. So what folks need to realize is that trust the folks who already been doing this work, right? Mm-hmm. And for me, people who've been doing this work are folks I follow, you know, are folks that I follow. And that means that we're not going to be the typical fashion of how we sourced our communities. And so those are some of the things I lean on. People are going to need jobs, right? People have been losing jobs. They lost jobs before. Now with COVID-19, they're losing jobs by the minute. That means they're not going to be able to pay rent. So there's so many gaps. And for folks who are in these spaces of funding, maybe also thinking of models of like, how can we hire folks and trust people who may not have the basic criteria may deem as qualifiable. You know, I'm a non-degreed person, but I have jobs that I come out of fruition because I use my own skill set, and there's so many qualified people there with jobs. So I think I look at that as a tool for folks who are in these spaces, who can provide jobs, who can provide training, who could provide a lot of things, or just trust folks' experience, you know? So I think a lot of those things are the gaps that will need to be filled, that are happening in our communities post COVID-19, and how we can remain sustainable so we can provide these resources to them, as well as resources to other grassroots orgs in our community. This is not just about me as one organization, you know, it's about how do I show up for all the other folks doing this work in our communities.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, Candy. Thank you, Kelsey. Thank you, Armand. The thread that I heard there in those sort of lingering thoughts were, you know, this work started long ago, and this work will continue into the future. We need to be able to sustain the work, and to do it in a way that doesn't exhaust and grind down the folks who are doing it. And the way I'm hearing, you know, more or less that an individual person or a philanthropy can do that is to trust. Look for the folks who are already doing this work and trust that they know what they're doing. It might, the skills, the format, the assumptions might not look the same, but maybe not just trust, but learn from these folks, learn from these processes, because, you know, the observation I would say is that you all are getting to the folks that, you know, big institutions say they want to get to, but they just don't have those relationships and that trust in the community. And so if we think about essential workers, you all are the essential workers. You all are getting out and getting it done. So think about how we can help, not why we can't. You know, if we start with the assumption that there is something that can be done here, rather than there are a bunch of rules that need to be met, and they might be why we can't, then we might get a lot farther. And then just, yeah, Kelsey.
I'll just add really quick, like in addition to trust, like don't underestimate what relationships, like how relationships play into this work, right? I think that, you know, there are a lot of people who want to do work, but the relationship building, the interpersonal connection can make all of the world of difference. From, you know, we have X amount of dollars, and why isn't anyone accessing this programming? The people who are facilitating the programming and the people who are facilitating the work make a world of difference. And like the people who look like the people who are serving it, or the people who have similar backgrounds to the people who are being served, make a world of difference. So I think that's something important to think about too when we're talking about philanthropy, and who we're recruiting to do this work.
Yes, thank you. Yeah. That is as an asset, you know, just starting from an asset mentality. Every experience you bring is an asset to that work. So the last point I will make as we close in here on 4 o'clock is like, just in short, each of these organizations who are here speaking today are going to get paid by San Diego Grantmakers. This is their time, their expertise that we asked them to bring, and that has value. And so we will be making a contribution to their efforts, because the stance that this is a benefit to them to show up and be able to talk to a room of philanthropists is the wrong frame. They've taught us today, and we're grateful for that. And so I just want to make sure that that is clear. And so we appreciate all that you've brought today, and appreciate the idea that you would show up and bring us that wisdom. And hopefully everybody here can take a little bit of that and incorporate it into their own lives. This will not be the last time we talk. But for those of you on this webinar, it will be the last of our COVID webinars, but please do engage with us in other ways. If you have any questions about the work at the March for Black Women San Diego and Black Women Deserve, We Got San Diego, and Paving Great Futures, please don't hesitate to reach out. I'm happy to make connections. Thank you for all that you do in our community, to our speakers. We do like a virtual round of applause and gratitude. We appreciate you. To all of our members, thanks for being with us, and stay well, stay safe, love one another, and we'll talk to you soon.